Hello, if you watched a video I previously uploaded on this topic, know that these ones are mostly new material. I will endeavor in this series of videos to demonstrate that racism is a central pillar of the viciously primitive death cult credo of the contemporary regressive left. Ancient ideas infected with ignorant animosities have been exhumed by the Democrat Party and camouflaged as benign, nonpartisan universal truths, then systematically sewn into every corner of our culture, from airwave to internet, boardroom to classroom. I also mean to show you here that no one cares less about black lives than millionaire aspartame activists and profane politicians with a knee on the ground and a fist in the air. You know, when I look at a black man, what do I see? I see a fellow passenger on this weird rock that is hurtling through an infinite, inscrutable abyss. I see a kindred soul. Kamala Harris sees a stepping stone, a mere means to an unrighteous end. I understand that my premise that wokeism is inherently racist is at stark odds with the public consensus. And as social creatures, we are hardwired to view minority opinions with incredulity. But do we not all freely admit that in years past, the overwhelming majority of the population was gravely mistaken on issues like slavery, women's suffrage, child labor, and colonization? We all know that. So why are we so quick to dismiss the possibility that contemporary generations could be equally wrong on critical matters? I call it temporal parochialism. Often our close proximity to a thing is precisely what distorts our view thereof. Too close to a tree to see the forest. The fact that my very moderate, formerly mainstream opinions will strike many as extreme is a testament to just how far our society has strayed from sanity. Okay? The public consensus has been pushed miles, 1 inch at a time, towards a murderous midnight of madness by way of stealthy nudges, so soft that we didn't even realize we were moving against our will. So why are most of us unaware that America has been stricken with a manufactured mass psychosis? Well, consider this. Movement perception is discerned from environmental relativity. For instance, someone inside a cruise ship may be unable to detect that they're in motion until they glance through a window at external reference points. When the ubiquitous media narrative and the viewpoints of everyone around you all float in unison towards insanity, the solitary figure who remains anchored by sanity is rendered an outlier. So I will give you an example. I'll give you an example of this. Okay? A sitting Supreme Court justice was asked in front of Congress the question, "What is a woman?" And she answered, "I'm not a biologist." That's like answering, "Hey, Supreme Court Justice, what's 1 + 1?" And you answer, "Oh, I'm not a mathematician." Okay? From my vantage point, which is unmoved by the tides of TikTok and Twitter, from my vantage point, such an answer from a Supreme Court Justice, that is cloud cuckoo land. But For someone who's plugged in to the 24/7 feverish news cycle, for someone who is moving in lockstep with the mad motion of the hypnotized herd, to this person, such an answer seems completely normal because all of their reference points, their friends, cable news, social media, all of their reference points are also in cloud cuckoo land. And I'll add that another contributing factor to Americans' inability to notice their drift into lunacy is the ascendancy of cancel culture. Think about it. If you shut down opposing opinions, how can you know when you're wrong? To engage in censorship is to blindfold your mind by blocking out contrary perspectives that can reflect your own follies. The beast who covers all the mirrors in the manor may begin to believe himself a beauty. Okay, so before we move on to examples of the bigotry of wokeism, I want to give you a gloss of my own philosophy on racism and contrast that with the left. All right, so the myriad manifestations of racism today mostly stem from one of two roots. One, a socialist serpentine scheme to deceive the populace into supporting measures contrary to their own interests. Or two, an erroneous abortion of an idea that race fundamentally dictates traits and that this justifies disparate treatment. Okay, don't be fooled by the ersatz intellectuals of the left who brandish big words to disguise small ideas. The definition of racism is very simple. A belief that someone's race is a primary arbiter of attribute, and that consequently, the way you treat them should be heavily influenced by the color of their skin. Now, who does that sound like? The right or the left? It's not hyperbole to state that wokeism is textbook racism. And on a side note, something authoritarians always strive to do is to warp the ubiquitously accepted meanings of words to align with their own agenda. Therefore, any new variants to the definition of racism from, let's say, 2010 or later, I regard as null and void. What we are seeing here is not etymological evolution, but perversion. And I resolutely refuse to play my adversaries' Orwellian word games. So now let's touch upon my thoughts on addressing the ramifications of past racism. Now, I actually support some types of affirmative action, so long as they never cross the line into systemic racism against whites and Asians, or against any ethnicities, which is precisely what we are witnessing in America today. Systemic racism directed towards certain groups. Now, undoubtedly, ubiquitous racism of yesteryears did indeed cause catastrophic consequences which still redound to the distinct detriment of ethnic minorities. I agree with that. Redlining would be a good example. To emerge from the long shadows of historical injustices, we should undertake decisive measures to mitigate their compounding intergenerational repercussions. However, I believe in all races working together to uplift those at an inherited disadvantage, while the approach of the left is to elevate some demographics by pulling down others, like lobsters in a cage, ensuring that we all remain trapped in misery. You get it? Wokeism equals selective racism. Listen, the way to remedy repercussions of a past crime is not to commit that very same crime against different victims. Such an egregiously ill-advised approach revives and extends age-old cycles of resentment and inequality, breeding bigoted, tribalistic credo, which condemns the populace to a perpetual state of internecine strife. And that, my friends, is precisely what the slogan-spewing spokespeople of this demented dogma of deception and division desire. Okay? The elite want the populace divided against themselves so that we don't unite against them. The unsacred string pullers of the left want everyone too preoccupied chasing chimeras across cave walls. Too busy bickering with their neighbors over melanin and microaggressions to feel the soft yet steadily tightening touch of chains. Okay, so I felt this was a good stopping point. I'll add a link here for part 2. Thank you for watching.